The destruction of Black civilization is the summary of 16 years of research and field studies by the historian Chancellor Williams. Begun as a planned 2-volume history of the African people, it was compressed into a single urgent book when his eyesight began to fail. Williams set out to answer one haunting question that no school book had ever answered for him. If the Blacks were once the leading people on Earth and the builders of the first great civilization, what happened? How was that civilization so completely destroyed that its people came to rest at the very bottom of the world? Williams' thesis is that Africa, the land of the Blacks, was the cradle of civilization, and that Black people pioneered writing, the sciences, medicine, architecture, and stone building before any other race. His inquiry concerned Black civilization alone, what the Blacks themselves achieved independently of Europe or Asia. The destruction, he argues, came from a combination of forces: invasion and conquest by white Asians and Europeans, the slow attack of nature and the spreading deserts, the conquest of minds by religion, endless migrations, and finally a fatal disunity, by which the African people further enshackled themselves with their own hands. First, the man and the method. A scholar who studied in the libraries of Europe and walked the bush country of 26 African nations, hunting a history that had been deliberately buried. It began with a little Black boy in the cotton fields of South Carolina asking questions no teacher could answer. How is it that white folks have everything and we have nothing? By the time he left high school, Williams already knew that the land of the Blacks was the cradle of civilization, that Egypt was once all Black, and that Blacks were pioneers of the sciences and writing. But the big question remained unanswered. He wanted the whole truth, good and bad, refusing to replace the system of racial lies with a glorified fiction built on wishful thinking rather than the hard labor of historical research. In 1953, Williams went to Oxford, not to Africa, because Europe and Asia had hauled out of Africa the very historical materials he needed to study. He sat in lectures on colonialism to study the Caucasian mind itself and found his richest evidence in hostile sources. A British professor sneered that Africa's wild and primitive system of democracy had to be destroyed before indirect rule could work, and in doing so, revealed to Williams an ancient African democracy that existed before Greece. The most racist writers, he learned, often prove the opposite of what they intend, supplying the very evidence they meant to suppress. Williams makes a blanket indictment of Western scholarship on Africa. They are not ignorant of Black achievement, he charges. They simply refuse to publish facts that upset a racial philosophy 3 centuries old. They periodize African history so that it becomes the history of Arabs and Europeans in Africa, erasing 4,000 years of Black civilization. Where Black achievement could not be denied, it was credited to some imaginary Caucasian influence. And the captured minds of Black scholars, trained to quote their masters like robots, faithfully carry the conqueror's viewpoint forward into a new generation. The history of the Blacks begins in Egypt, which Williams calls the northeastern region of ancient Ethiopia, and in the Sudan to the south. Here, where the indestructible monuments still stand, the great deception was worked. Egypt, Williams insists, was the northeastern province of the ancient Ethiopian Empire, a Black world that once stretched from the Mediterranean to the source of the Nile. The very heartland of the race lay below the First Cataract, around the capitals of Napata and Meroe, and from there, Black civilization spread northward into what the world later called Egyptian civilization. Even in the time of Menes, who united the two lands around 3100 BC, Ethiopia still held 3/4 of Egypt, while white Asians held only the delta. To explain the two lands honestly, Williams writes, would blast the myth about who built Egypt. The destruction of Egypt was an ethnic transformation worked over millennia. White Asians settled the delta, took black women as slaves, and fathered a new mulatto breed who were classified not as African, but as white. These half-white sons turned against their mother's race, joining their fathers in wars and slave raids against the blacks. By a trick exactly opposite to the American rule, anyone with Caucasian blood became white, so that even unmixed black pharaohs were disguised as Caucasians, and the original population was never called Egyptian at all. Egypt turned slowly from black to brown to white, and was renamed out of African history. Geography itself seemed designed to test one race to the utmost. The slow death of the soil and the relentless advance of the Sahara turned 3/4 of the continent into desert and wasteland. The great rivers and the high inclined plane of the land sloped the wealth northward. The Nile enriched only Egypt's final stretch, while sinking in deep canyons through the heart of Black Africa. Disease, born of hunger and malnutrition, spread as the scout of death. Williams estimates these combined forces of nature, slavery, and war reduced the black population by 3/4, leaving a people who under fair conditions would today be 4 times their number. To understand what happened to the African people, Williams says, study the migrations. The long, often aimless wandering over the continent was the great historic race of the blacks for survival, fleeing famine, slavery, and death. The endless migrations are, for Williams, the master key to the destruction. Hemmed in from every seacoast and pushed into the shrinking interior, great United Nations fragmented into countless little splinter societies. Isolation bred over 2,000 languages and dialects, and the gulf of distance and tongue turned brother against brother. Disunity and mutual suspicion became an African way of life. Small chiefdoms of a few hundred people sprang up everywhere, each regarding the next as a stranger or an enemy. How was the art of writing lost? How did one people splinter into thousands? Study the migrations, Williams answers again and again. Other invaders came under the banners of faith, exploiting the fact that Africans are a deeply religious people. First came the crescent of Islam, advancing by proselytizing missions, intermarriage and concubinage, and forced conversion at sword point. Then the cross of Christianity followed, and conversion meant far more than a new creed. It meant remaking the African in the white man's image, his ideas and value system. Millions of Africans became non-Africans, forced to renounce their culture as backward, surrender their names for Arabic and Christian ones, and accept the status of nobodies in a race that could be saved only by ceasing to be itself. Against this loss, Williams sets a great discovery, a single constitutional system that prevailed across all of Black Africa, as though the whole race lived under one government. Through continent-wide study of customary law, he found an ancient African democracy, evolved before Greece, in which the people were the real rulers in fact and not merely in theory. A king could not even receive strangers without his council of elders. His voice was the voice of the people, without whom he could not act. To the British, this real social democracy was savage, precisely because the people held the power. It is, Williams argues, the true foundation of African identity. Some leaders, Williams writes, seem never to have known the meaning of failure. Ejected from one homeland, they led the people to another and began to build again. Through case studies of states from every region, he traces the long African struggle to restore the glory that was Ethiopia's.
In the western Sudan rose the great successor empires, the state the world calls Ghana, then Mali, then Songhay, carried the African revival of learning to its height, with universities and scholars renowned across the known world. But these were also the empires of the Black Muslim triumph, and in that triumph Williams locates a fatal turn. The new faith from across the Sahara, however brilliant its golden age, advanced hand in hand with the conquest and enslavement of Black Africa, and the end of these empires closed one of the proudest chapters of the long resistance.
Williams' case studies range across the continent. In Central Africa, the small kingdom of Cuba preserved African government, religion, and philosophy intact, ruled by figures like Shyam the Great. To the west, the Congo-Angola story brought the white devils from the west and the unconquerable Queen Zinga, who fought Portugal for decades. To the southeast rose the last of the empire builders and the great Mutota. Each shows the same pattern: a people who, having lost state after state and 3/4 of their kinsmen, overrode all the forces of hell to build still another kingdom, some enduring 1,000 years. History, for the Black historian, cannot end with mere knowledge. Williams turns from the past to the present to ask the only question that matters. Knowing all this, what must we do now? The deepest cause of the destruction, Williams concludes, was disunity. Beyond the deserts and the invaders, the African people enshackled themselves with their own hands, splintering into rival groups, selling captured kinsmen to slave-hungry Arabs, and welcoming the conqueror's name and religion. Even today, he writes, Africa has only the illusion of being free. It is barely 1/3 free and still economically enshackled. The central problem of the Black world, in Africa and in the diaspora alike, is the same as it has always been. The people must unite or perish. There is no third path. Williams ends not in despair, but with a master plan. The race must organize for action, building its own research, its own institutions, and its own African ideology drawn from the traditional constitution that once united the continent. The final task is the liberation of our minds, to become intellectually de-Caucasianized enough to think originally and to stop grabbing the white man's systems without question. This last period, he writes, is the time of great decisions and may well be the Black race's last chance for a rebirth and salvation. Our history can become at once the foundation and the guiding light. Williams opens his book with a Sumerian legend. A traveler asks an old man what became of the Black people of Sumer, and the old man sighs, "They lost their history, so they died." The destruction of Black civilization is Williams' answer to that warning, a reinterpretation written so that the cab driver and the housemaid could understand the message of their forefathers as well as any professor. Know our history, he urges. Learn where we were strong and where we were weak, and use it as the foundation for the work of becoming strong again.